was an epic battle, one of the greatest local victories, one of the brightest manifestations of the resilience of the spirit of Ukrainian soldiers. February 2015 was when the battle for Height 307.5, better known as Height Valera, took place. 5 separatist tanks and 1 armored personnel carrier against just the 1 tank of the Ukrainian army. Having achieved a local victory, the enemy tanks rushed into our fortified area and started hunting Ukrainian soldiers. They were crushing them like Germans in World War II. They crashed them through the trenches in their tanks like hares. And those people managed to burn all those tanks down with grenade launchers. It happened very quickly, literally within a few seconds. I heard a tank approaching from the front. I decided to wait it out and crouched even lower in the trench.
Пригнувся ще більше в окоп. Я думав, що танки перескочать через нас і вже ззаді будуть зачищати.
I thought the tanks would just go over us, but the tank changed direction and turned left. Then I heard the tank engine from my left about a minute later, and saw it was about 8 meters away from me. It was going along the trench, with one track in the trench and the other on top, on the other side. And it was pointing at me. It was going directly at me.
8, напевно. Їде по окопу і одною гусеницею по окопу, а другою зверху по брустверу. І причому націлений на мене, так строго на мене.
Alexandr Zozulyak was born and grew up in Chernivtsi Region. He's a bioengineer by education and worked in the IT field before the war. But when Russia launched an aggressive war against us, he received call-up papers from the recruitment office. Zozulyak made his choice and was unshakable in that decision.
Під час призову там мій командир мене приймав документи і
During the drafting process, my commander was receiving documents and asked me directly, would I be going to fight or teach personnel in the rear? I said I was going to fight, and that was what I came there for.
Я сказав, що так, буду, я для цього сюди прийшов.
After performing combat missions in Artemivsk, Popasna, Zolote, and Debaltseve, the mortar battery platoon led by 1st Lieutenant Zozulyak was sent to Height 307.5 near Sanjarivka. That was one of the last points that, by taking control of the enemy, would have closed off the Debaltseve cauldron.
Тривав 3-й день боїв за нашу висоту. 3 дня вони нас штурмували.
It was the 3rd day of fighting for our height. They'd been attacking us for 3 days. On the 3rd day, after yet more artillery shelling, they decided to assault us. The 5 tanks and 1 armored personnel carrier advanced in our direction. We had no artillery support at the time. I contacted my command and they said, keep watching.
Артилерії на той момент не було. Я зв'язався зі своїм командуванням. Вони сказали, спостерігайте.
The legendary Ukrainian tank Buhai was the only one available for our guys. Despite the considerable numerical advantage of the enemy, our crew took up the fight and went into the field. The Buhai eliminated 1 enemy tank, but was very soon damaged itself.
Виїхали, побахали, заїжджаєте, в нього башня на скосі, пушка дивиться кудись.
Went out, shot for a while. Its turret was at a weird angle, and the gun was pointing to the side. It got jammed, and the crew ran to a trench. They only had a couple of RPGs and several Moha anti-tank rocket launchers, which they barely even used. They tried, but even the RPGs can't make this tin can burn. Everything that happened next was beyond the principles of humanity and common sense. The separatists and Russian mercenaries, after that realized that we had no more heavy armor, went on the offensive and started running over our men with the tank tracks. There were Ukrainian troops led by Alexandr Zozulyak in one of the trenches that a Russian tank drove over. The tank crushed 2 of them to death, and after that it went straight for Alexander.
І єдиний варіант, який я вибрав для себе, це проскочити між гусеницями танка. Була там така виїмка в окопі.
The only option I could choose was to slip myself between the tank tracks, since there was no alcove in the trench. I could just barely fit in there, so I jumped in its direction and landed on my back. As soon as I was on the ground, the tank drove over my left arm, body armor, and my left leg.
Ну, по лівій частині тіла. Ліва рука, бронежилет і ліва нога.
The tank that Zozulyak was lying under came to a stop and decided to back up to finish off the Ukrainian. But as soon as it switched gears, it was immobilized by an accurate shot from a grenade launcher to its turret. Sergeant Boris Lissy had finally set the enemy vehicle on fire.
Не знаю, він би виїхав чи не виїхав. Ну, просто, щоб він...
I don't know if it was able to get out of that trench, but even if it had only just spun the track backwards, it would have crushed both Alexander and Serhiy. I didn't have time to reload again. I saw our guys climbing onto the tank and throwing grenades. They threw quite a few down the hatch. Grenadiers Boris Lissy and Alexander Mikhailovsky managed to set fire to 2 more tanks by just almost using automatic RPG fire. Mercenary crews from St. Petersburg crawled out of those and were taken prisoner by our men. During that unequal battle, 4 Russian tanks were smashed, 3 of them by infantry using hand weapons. Realizing the futility of the situation, the last, 5th enemy tank fled from the battlefield. Ukrainians suffered terrible losses, but at the same time they totally destroyed the aggressor. By and large, they could have fled, because they had almost nothing to defend themselves with, but they stayed to carry out their task, and I'm going to say that they fulfilled it with pride and honor. Once the smoke had cleared and our heroes came to their senses a bit, Boris Lissy went to inspect the battlefield and check if there were any surviving comrades in the snow and the trenches. He saw the silhouette of a man under the track of the tank he'd disabled. Who is that? I took a closer look. He was wearing our armor vest, because the separatist tank crew had no vests. It could be one of ours, so I looked even closer. He was black from suit, like all of us. Oh, that's Zozulyak. I came closer, but he just kept looking at me. I said, Alexander, is that you? But he just blinked once. He couldn't say a thing. That's one of the hardest moments to remember. I saw him just lying there. What could I do? The reinforcements that arrived after the battle in the form of several tanks helped lift the enemy vehicle. Soldiers got the mutilated, but most importantly, still living Oleksandr Zozulyak out of the trench and got him to hospital. He had virtually no left arm, and his leg, hip joint, and torso were fractured in 12 places. I felt everything from the moment that the tank ran over me. I felt all my lost limbs, all the fractures, everything. I can still feel them, so I feel myself completely. I have the sense of feeling, even if not some parts of my body.
Всі переломи, ну, все повністю відчував і навіть зараз відчуваю, і так що я повністю себе усвідомлюю, навіть якщо немає деяких частин.
On that day, without exaggeration, the difference between life and death for him was measured in millimeters and seconds. As Zozulyak himself admitted later, for a long time he was unable to determine if he was alive or dead. And if he was alive, then how did he remain in this world when having just 1% out of 100? Searching for the answer, he decided that if he could accept the horror of war and stay alive, then he had no right to give up. After numerous surgeries and a long recovery process, Alexandr Zozulyak got up on his feet, left the hospital, and looked at the world in a completely different way. For starters, the hero of this episode decided to try his hand at cycling. His coach, Oleg Prohorenko, recalls how Alexander first came to him. Back then, it was difficult for Zozulyak to walk, let alone ride a bike. But given the strength of character of our warrior, the coach played along and even developed cycling shoes for him. He was almost dragging his heels on the asphalt. I made some small changes with the spikes. I drilled a few holes and attached a spike in the center of the sole. 3 months later, his leg was no longer hanging, and that was rehabilitation. Now he can pedal a bike just fine.
Сейчас он абсолютно нормально крутит.
Cycling workouts contributed not just to improvement of his sporting results, but also his rehabilitation. His muscles were getting stronger and his left leg, which had barely been saved from amputation, was becoming stronger and performing its primary functions.
Огромный идет приток крови в мягкие ткани, огромный приток.
A strong blood flow goes to the soft tissues. They work all the time. That is, one group of tissue gets tired, then another one, and then the first one recovers. So we can enlist the use of a large number of muscles, like we couldn't have in any other way.
Можем огромный объем мышц задействовать.
Never retreat and never give up, both in life and on the front line. And that includes sports arenas. As befits a true undefeated, Zozulyak backed up his ambitions with results. He trained a lot, got a job with the national police, and even cycled to work.
Велоспорт, он чистит мысли.
Cycling cleans the mind. A person who can ride a bicycle for a long time attains a state of inner peace. Their state of rest becomes much stronger. And again, if the person had been resting for a long time, they enter the state of rest faster.
Вход в состояние покоя происходит быстрее.
Alexandr Zozulyak decided to try himself at another sport, where the ability to remain calm is very important. Initially, he attended training sessions and then archery tournaments. With time, he was spotted by coaches of the Ukrainian national team, who drew up the list of candidates for the 2018 Invictus Games. And when we were selecting team members, cycling coach Klemenko picked him for cycling. And I said, pick him for cycling, and I'll pick him for archery as a secondary sport. I didn't take him into the team, but he was on my personal account. That's because at first, a team of 3 people was announced. So Oleksandr cycled in the morning and shot bows in the evening. Less than 2 months before the start of the Games of the Undefeated in Sydney, a special prosthetic was made for Alexandr for archery. He'd already had good results before that, but thanks to the Ukrainian-made prosthetic, his shooting became much more stable. According to the hero of our episode, phantom hand sensations are still with him to this very day. But in the case of archery, Zozulyak learned to benefit from them.
Когда импульс с периферии, с кончиков пальцев, например, поступает.
When an impulse from the periphery, from the fingertips, reaches the cerebral cortex, it gets imprinted and remembered over time. When a person loses a limb, there's no limb and no receptors, but the image in the cerebral cortex remains. People feel their limbs because the image stays in the cortex, the image of a limb that is no longer there.
И поэтому люди ощущают свою руку, потому что работает эта картинка в коре, руку, которой нет.
With the minimum amount of preparation time, Zozulyak progressed by the hour. His stability and steadfastness were the biggest pleasant surprise for his coaches. His results were great at the final meeting and sparring both in archery and cycling. The third meeting was just stable. I keep telling him, Alexandr, you're stable, you're doing great. And he replies with, I want to do better. So his results were very characteristic. What he achieved during training, 253, 255, he did the same in competitions. After all, that's worth a lot. He was 100% ready, but his equipment was not. On the very first day of the competitions, Zozulyak went to the cycling track and remained in the leading group. But his prosthesis suddenly unfastened during a race, and the Ukrainian finished 13th. The prosthesis fastener came undone. Had he not lost those 28 seconds when in first place, I think he would have been at least in the top 3. So I believe it was a purely technical error. It was either overlooked or the sticky tape was too weak. Alexandr agreed to swim in the team relay, when our men also have no awards. Although in general, the Ukrainian team is progressing through the tournament with more confidence and wins medals in almost every sport each day. And here it is, his final chance at the Games of the Undefeated in Sydney, the individual archery competition. Instead of anxiety, there is Olympic calm, tempered in battles, training and competitions.
У спортсмена очень сильное хладнокровие.
The athlete has very strong composure. Speaking in the language of the nervous system, composure is immunity to external stimuli. That is the minimum response of the body to any external stimuli. That is, your actions are almost not affected by any external actions of the environment you are in. A policeman from Ukraine who miraculously survived a terrible battle near Debaltseve is now making the audience in Sydney stand up in applause, surprising everyone with his confidence and composure. Our team's coach does not hide her emotions. In the semi-finals, Zozulyak managed to keep it together even in a situation where it would seem he would have to lay down his arms. When he was trying to get into the final, the score was 5-5, so there was an extra round, a shootout. His opponent hit a 10, and Alexandr hit an X10, and with that 10, he reached the final. Having spent most of his energy on all fronts, Alexandr Zozulyak lost by a fraction in the final to the Australian Darren Peters. But his silver medal is much, much more than just a piece of metal. This is his title and reward for hard work, faith in his own strength, and perseverance, which are complemented with recognition from the whole world, respect, and a sense of huge gratitude on the part of millions of Ukrainians. Our athletes brought home with them 20 awards at various levels, proving once again that Ukrainians are a proud, strong, determined, and undefeatable people. The 2018 Invictus Games are now history, and history is not just about medals and victories. Thousands of men and women have shown through their example that they are stronger than any, even the hardest blows of fate. Alexandr Zozulyak doesn't want to overestimate the importance of his award at the Games of the Undefeated, but he is grateful to the project for making him a completely different person now. I was more withdrawn, possibly even a bit depressive. I've become more open and maybe more cheerful after all these events. Invictus helped me a great deal in physical terms. I feel 10 to 15 years younger, and I think that in some cases I'm even stronger now than I was before the injuries.
І мені здається, що навіть сильніший, ніж до поранення в деяких випадках.
In the autumn of 2018, they all met again, all those who survived. A documentary with the working title of Black Snow is being filmed based on the events of the battle that took place near Sanjarivka. The lives of Boris Lisi, Alexandr Zozulyak and others will never be the same. But it's up to them to make the choice between merely existing or continuing to live.
Саме так треба.
Yes, that's exactly how it should be. We shouldn't distance ourselves, seek help in alcohol or something else. There are people who have both arms and legs, but everything's upside down in their heads. Who knows what is worse?
Руки-ноги на місці, а голову перевертає. Це неізвісно, що гірше.
Alexandr Zozulyak decided to keep doing sports. He continues to compete in different kinds of sports. His achievements are pushing him to reach a new level and to also help other veterans to defeat the war and its consequences.
Основна моя мрія трошки змінити своє життя. Можливо,
my biggest dream is to change my life a little. Perhaps have some sports rehabilitation projects, both for myself and for our veterans. But overall, my dream is for this war to finally end, for a peaceful life to begin, and for me to have my own family and a bright future.
Мирне життя, сім'я своя, світле майбутнє.
The next Games of the Undefeated will be held in 2020 in the Netherlands. Experience shows that this project can become an alternative and a lifeline for hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers. Alexandr Zozulyak remains faithful to sports and is ready to help others. You just need to rise above your problems and allow yourself to become truly undefeated.